Hi, my name is Hannah, and my presentation is about nonverbal communication in teaching. So, over 90% of communication is nonverbal. People often hear sayings such as it's not what they said, but it's how they said it, or actions speak louder than words. And this screams to the importance of nonverbal communication, from intonation, which is the way it's said, to proximity, which is how close you are to someone, and even gestures, which is, of course, using your hands. Some people believe that almost 75% of a teacher's classroom management is based on nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication, students make snap judgments about a teacher's competence and their character. Communication is the exchange of a message between two people. It is the process by which humans share knowledge, attitudes, and skills. Communication is often identified with speech, and there is two dimensions, verbal and nonverbal. So verbal is simple, it's what's said. Nonverbal is just that, it's the communication without the words. It uses facial expressions, gazing, touching, tone of voice, posture, proxemics, and even the way a person is dressed. Everything communicates. Verbal communication can be shut off. We often hear, well, that person doesn't have a filter, as in, they say whatever comes to their mind. And nonverbal communication is much more difficult to be shut off that way. It usually takes about 3 seconds to make somebody feel uncomfortable in silence. Nonverbal communication is essential, and for many reasons. Words have limitations. This is proven when every time you get a text message that it's misinterpreted. And there are situations where nonverbal communication is more effective than verbal communication, such as when describing a feeling or a quick direction of something. It's easier to be described with a hand gesture. Nonverbal messages are more likely to be genuine. Like I said, it's harder to hide those nonverbal behaviors when compared to spoken word. Nonverbal signals can express feelings that are maybe they're inappropriate to say because of a social situation, or maybe there's somebody nearby that's listening, and you don't want them to know. A speaker can add to the complexity of a message with a few nonverbal behaviors. Nonverbal communication appears and benefits many aspects of the communication process. There are numerous ways to communicate nonverbally. Teachers who have a desire to communicate nonverbally should watch body language, eye contact, gestures, facial expressions, and even a student's presentation, how they're dressed. Awareness of these elements can really improve a teacher's effectiveness and success with students. When a teacher addresses the nonverbal behavior of students in the classroom, then one can easily see the impact that these behaviors may have. A student sitting upright and leaned forward and even nodding their head is seen as focused and learning and attentive, whereas a student who's slouched in their seat, they got their head placed in their hand, maybe on the desk, they're seen as uninterested and unfocused and even less competent than the first student described. Nonverbal messages and gestures are, mostly uncontrollable and usually unintentional. Because of this, especially for teachers, they read a great deal into these nonverbal behaviors. Nonverbal messages are trusted more than the spoken ones, especially when they don't match what is being said. Like a teacher may ask a student, did they understand the message? And they'll shake their head and say, yeah, I understood it. And that shaky voice and, the furrowed brow makes the teacher think, well, maybe the student didn't understand that lesson as much as they should have, and maybe we need to go over that in class again. So education research discusses that teachers form impressions based on the nonverbal behaviors of students. Research also explains that teachers use nonverbal messages to evaluate how effective they are in teaching. And some studies found that the student's behavior is dependent on a teacher's nonverbal behaviors. Some stated that a large majority of the classroom management is based on student behaviors. Most of the studies say that it's a transactional process, that one communicator affects the other. And it's reciprocal. It keeps going back and forth and back and forth. Every time that one person makes a behavior, it affects that person's behavior, and that person's behavior affects the other one, and it just keeps going back and forth. They are mutually influence each other. Each partner is partially responsible for the other's message, the other's behaviors. So nonverbal communication is extremely important in determining the success and the failure of a person in ordinary and professional life. In the classroom, the communication between student and teacher is crucial, and it affects on proficiency and the student's learning. A major portion of the communication is nonverbal. Literature is extensive on nonverbal communication, especially within the classroom. Being an effective teacher is a primary concern for most educators. Research for nonverbal communication and the relationship between both teachers and students can greatly be beneficial to educators. Research suggests that great nonverbal communication skills can improve the experience for the students and the teachers alike. It indicates areas where nonverbal communication can positively affect in-class lectures and the relationship between teachers and students if it's used properly. Teachers who put more of an effort into nonverbal communication tend to inspire their students to put more of an effort into the class itself. They tend to be more engaged, more involved. The students learn more from the subject and in the class as a whole. This is a central objective for the educational system, to increase a student's recognition, recall, and short and long-term learning. And if a teacher shows more immediacy in those nonverbal behaviors, then the student reciprocates that behavior, and you achieve that main goal of the student learning more through the class. Thank you.